When my son handed me that silk scarf at my 60th birthday dinner and said, "Here, Mom, hide your wrinkles," I felt something inside me crack. Not break. Not shatter. Just crack. Like ice on a frozen lake when the first warm day arrives. The restaurant was full of laughter and clinking glasses, but in that moment, all I could hear was the echo of those 5 words bouncing around in my skull. I looked down at the scarf in my hands, cream-colored, delicate, expensive probably, and then up at Max's face. My son. My firstborn. The boy I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through countless sleepless nights, worked 3 jobs to put through college. He was smiling, that same charming smile he'd inherited from his father, waiting for me to thank him, waiting for me to be grateful. And behind him stood Jessica, his wife, her lips pressed together in what might have been approval or might have been suppressed laughter. I couldn't tell anymore. "Thank you," I whispered, my fingers trembling as they touched the silk. But even as I said it, I knew something had fundamentally shifted. When they brought out the birthday cake 10 minutes later, a small plain thing from the grocery store, not even homemade, no one could look me in the eye. Not Max. Not Jessica. Not even my daughter Claire, who sat across from me with her head down, pushing food around her plate like a child who knows something terrible is happening, but doesn't know how to stop it. Before I tell you what happened next, I need you to stay with me till the end of this story. Because what started with that scarf and that cake led me down a path I never expected to walk. And by the time you reach the end, you won't believe how everything unfolded. You won't believe what I discovered, what I did, and how justice, real, beautiful, undeniable justice, finally came knocking on the doors of those who thought they could make me invisible. Let me take you back to where this story really begins. Not to that birthday dinner, but to 28 years earlier, when I was 32 years old and my whole world was falling apart for the first time. My husband Robert had just died. A heart attack at 35. One moment he was laughing at something on television, the next he was clutching his chest and collapsing onto our living room floor. I remember screaming for Max to call 911. He was only 6 years old and he stood there frozen, his little hands shaking as he held the phone. Claire was just 3, crying in her crib upstairs because she could hear the panic in my voice. Robert died before the ambulance arrived. He died in my arms on that beige carpet we'd bought together just 2 months earlier from a discount store, excited because we were finally furnishing our first real home. He died while I begged him to stay, while I promised him everything would be okay, while I lied through my tears because I knew nothing would ever be okay again. The funeral was small. We didn't have much money. Robert had been a mechanic, a good one, but we were still paying off student loans and medical bills from when Claire was born premature. His life insurance policy was barely enough to cover the funeral costs and 2 months of mortgage payments. After that, I was on my own with 2 small children, a house I couldn't afford, and a resume that hadn't been updated in 7 years. I want you to understand something about those early years. I want you to really understand, because this is the foundation of everything that came after. I took 3 jobs. 3. During the day, I worked as a receptionist at a dental office. The pay was minimal, but it came with health insurance, and that was worth more than gold when you have 2 young children. In the evenings, I cleaned office buildings downtown. I would drop the kids at my mother's house. Bless her soul, she's been gone 5 years now. And I would scrub toilets and vacuum floors until midnight. Then I would pick up Max and Claire, take them home, put them to bed, and sleep for 4 hours before doing it all again. But even that wasn't enough. So on weekends, I worked at a department store, folding clothes and ringing up customers while Max watched Claire at home. He was only 7 years old, but he had to grow up fast. Too fast. I would come home to find him feeding his sister cereal for dinner because he didn't know how to cook anything else. I would find them watching cartoons together, Claire curled up against her big brother like he was the only solid thing in a world that had become terrifyingly unstable. I miss school plays. I miss parent-teacher conferences. I miss soccer games and birthday parties and all the little moments that make up a childhood. But I never missed a mortgage payment. I never missed putting food on the table. I never missed making sure my children had clean clothes and school supplies and birthday presents, even if those presents came from thrift stores and clearance bins. When Max was 12, he came to me one night and asked why we couldn't afford the basketball shoes all his friends had. I was exhausted, sitting at the kitchen table with bills spread out in front of me, trying to figure out how to pay for Claire's braces. I looked at my son, This boy who was becoming a young man who was starting to notice what we didn't have, and I felt like a failure. "I'm sorry," I told him. "I'm doing the best I can." He looked at me for a long moment, and then he said something that made me believe everything would be worth it in the end. He said, "I know, Mom. It's okay. I don't need those shoes anyway. I just wanted to ask." That night I cried myself to sleep, but I also made a promise. I promised myself that my children would have better lives than I'd had, that they would go to college, that they would have opportunities, that they would never have to work 3 jobs just to survive. I kept that promise. I kept it through years of exhaustion and sacrifice. When Max got into state university, I took out loans I knew I'd be paying off until I died. When he wanted to study engineering, I worked extra hours to help cover his expenses beyond what the loans covered. When he graduated and got his first job, I was there in the audience crying with pride and relief because finally my sacrifices had meant something. Claire followed 4 years later. She went to a smaller school, studied nursing, graduated with honors. Both my children were successful. Both my children were thriving. And I genuinely thought that they understood what I'd done for them. I thought they knew. I thought they appreciated it, even if they never said it out loud. I was wrong. The signs were there. Looking back now, I can see them clearly, like reading a map after you've already gotten lost. But when you're living through something, when you're in the middle of the forest, you can't see the pattern of the trees. It started about 5 years ago when Max married Jessica. Jessica came from money. Not rich exactly, but comfortable. Her parents owned a successful accounting firm. She'd grown up in a house with a pool, gone to private schools, spent summers traveling to Europe. She was beautiful, polished, and confident in the way people are when they've never had to worry about whether they can afford groceries. I liked her at first. I wanted to like her. Max seemed happy, and that was all that mattered to me. At their wedding, which Jessica's parents paid for, a lavish affair at a country club, I sat in the front row wearing a dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion from a clearance rack. It was the nicest dress I'd ever owned. I felt almost elegant. But during the reception, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I'd gone to the bathroom, and when I came out, Jessica and her mother were standing in the hallway just around the corner. Their voices low but carrying. "She seems nice enough," Jessica's mother was saying. "She is," Jessica replied. "But honestly, Mother, you can tell she's not used to occasions like this. Did you see her dress? And the way she holds her fork? Max says she worked blue-collar jobs most of her life. Well, the important thing is that Max has elevated himself. He's nothing like his background now. Thank God for that." They laughed, light and airy, and then moved away. I stood there in that hallway, my hands clenched at my sides, feeling like I'd been slapped. But I told myself it didn't matter. Jessica was young. She didn't understand. And Max loved me. That's what mattered. Except Max started changing after the marriage. First it was subtle. He called less often. When I invited them over for dinner, there was always an excuse. Work was busy, they had plans, Jessica wasn't feeling well. When they did come, Jessica would glance around my small house with barely concealed distaste, commenting on how cozy everything was in a tone that clearly meant cramped. Then Max got a promotion. A big one. He and Jessica bought a house in an expensive neighborhood. The kind of place with manicured lawns and luxury cars in every driveway. They invited me over for a housewarming party, and I went, excited to see my son's success. Excited to celebrate with him. But when I arrived, Jessica answered the door and looked me up and down with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Eleanor," she said. She never called me Mom, never even asked if she could. "We weren't expecting you so early. The invitation said 6 o'clock. It's 6:15. "Oh well, most people arrive fashionably late to these things." She stepped aside to let me in, but there was something dismissive in the gesture. "Maybe leave your coat in the car? The closet is getting full." I left my coat in the car. I stayed at that party for 3 hours, watching Jessica introduce Max to her friends and colleagues, watching her show off their new home with its marble countertops and custom cabinets. No one asked me how I was doing. No one asked me anything. I was just Max's mother, the woman in the corner with the cheap handbag and the wrong kind of shoes. When I tried to leave, Max walked me to the door. For just a moment I thought he might acknowledge what was happening. I thought he might apologize or at least pretend to notice that I'd been virtually ignored all evening. Instead, he said, "Thanks for coming, Mom. Hey, next time maybe dress up a bit more? Jessica's friends are kind of, they notice things." I drove home that night with tears streaming down my face, barely able to see the road. But I told myself I was being overly sensitive. I told myself Max didn't mean it the way it sounded. I told myself that children grow up and grow apart, and that's natural and I needed to accept it. But it got worse. 6 months later, Jessica got pregnant. When Max called to tell me I was going to be a grandmother, I cried with joy. This was it, I thought. This would bring us back together. A baby changes everything. Can I help? I asked immediately. I can babysit. I can cook meals. Whatever you need. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Max said, "Actually, Mom, we're going to hire a professional nanny. Jessica's very particular about childcare. She's been researching agencies." "A nanny? But Max, I raised you and Claire. I think I know a thing or two about babies." "I know, Mom. It's just, times are different now. There are new guidelines, new methods. Jessica wants someone with formal training. Someone with formal training. Not his own mother, who'd sacrificed everything to raise him. Someone with a certificate from an expensive program." When baby Emma was born, I wasn't allowed in the delivery room. Jessica wanted only her mother there. I sat in the waiting room for 7 hours, watching other grandparents get called back to meet their grandchildren, until finally Max emerged and said I could come see the baby for 15 minutes because Jessica was tired. 15 minutes. To meet my first grandchild. Emma was beautiful, tiny and perfect with Max's nose and Jessica's dark hair. I held her carefully, marveling at her little fingers and the weight of her in my arms. And I thought about holding Max like this 29 years ago, alone in a hospital room because Robert had to work and couldn't take time off. I thought about all the nights I'd walked the floor with him when he had colic, all the times I'd rocked him to sleep while my arms ached and my eyes burned with exhaustion. "Time's up," Jessica said from the bed, her voice flat. "I need to feed her." I handed Emma back, kissed Max on the cheek and left. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, trying to compose myself enough to drive home. Over the next 2 years I saw Emma exactly 14 times. I counted. Jessica always had a reason why I couldn't visit. Emma was sleeping on a schedule that couldn't be disrupted. They were trying a new feeding routine. Emma was too young for too many visitors. Emma was getting sick too easily, and they needed to limit exposure. But Jessica's mother was there constantly. I saw the photos on social media. Jessica and her mother at the park with Emma. Jessica's mother holding Emma at family gatherings. Jessica's mother teaching Emma to walk. I tried to talk to Max about it. I called him one evening and said as gently as I could, "I feel like I'm missing out on Emma's life. I barely know my own granddaughter." "Mom, you're being dramatic. You've seen her plenty. 14 times in 2 years, Max. Your mother-in-law sees her multiple times a week. That's different. She lives closer. And she and Jessica have a special bond. I could have a special bond with Emma too if you'd let me." He sighed, that particular sigh that meant he was done with the conversation. "I don't have time for this right now, Mom. Work is crazy. I'll call you later." He didn't call later. He didn't call for 3 weeks. Claire saw what was happening. She tried to talk to Max to make him understand what he was doing to me. But Claire had her own life. She'd moved to Portland for work, was building her career, had just gotten engaged to a wonderful man named David. I didn't want to burden her with my problems. I told her everything was fine. But everything wasn't fine. Everything was falling apart in slow motion. So slowly that I kept thinking maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was too needy, too demanding, too old-fashioned in my expectations of how families should treat each other. Then came the phone call that started it all. The one that led to the scarf, the birthday dinner, and everything that came after. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was home working on a quilt for Emma. Not that I knew when I'd be able to give it to her, but I made it anyway because I needed to do something that felt like love. My phone rang and I saw Max's name on the screen. "Hi, honey," I said, immediately smiling despite everything, because no matter what, he was still my son. That doesn't just go away. "Hey, Mom." His voice was casual, distracted. "Quick question. We're planning a vacation for next summer. 2 weeks in Italy. Just the three of us, me, Jessica, and Emma. Jessica's parents are going to watch the house and the dog. We're thinking late June. Does that work for you? I was confused. Does it work for me to do what? To watch the house and the dog. We need someone here, and Jessica's parents can only do the first week. Something cold settled in my stomach. You want me to house sit while you take your family to Italy? Well, yeah. Is that a problem? I thought you'd like to help out. Max. I set down the quilt, my hands suddenly unsteady. You're asking me to watch your house while you go on a family vacation. But you don't consider me part of the family you're taking on that vacation. Mom, don't start. Don't start what? Noticing that I'm being treated like the help instead of your mother. That's not fair. We can't afford to take extra people. Italy's expensive. I wouldn't ask you to pay for me. That's not the point. The point is that your daughter is 2 years old, and I've barely spent any time with her because you and Jessica have shut me out. And now you want me to be useful to you in the one way you think I'm good for, watching your house like a caretaker. Jesus, Mom, you're making such a big deal out of nothing. Fine. Forget I asked. We'll figure something else out. He hung up. Just like that. No apology. No acknowledgement that maybe he'd hurt my feelings. Just click and he was gone. I sat there with the phone in my hand, Emma's unfinished quilt on my lap, and I finally admitted to myself what I'd been denying for years. My son didn't love me anymore. Or if he did, it was the kind of love that's obligatory. The kind that doesn't cost anything or require any real thought. The kind that shows up at Christmas with a generic gift card and leaves as soon as politely possible. I had become an inconvenience in my son's life. A reminder of a past he wanted to forget. A background he wanted to distance himself from. A woman who didn't fit into the polished, successful world he'd built with Jessica. That was 4 months before my 60th birthday. The invitation came by text. Not even a phone call. A text from Jessica, added to a group chat with Max, Claire and David. Planning Eleanor's 60th birthday dinner for Saturday the 14th. Rosario's Italian restaurant, 6:30 p.m. Please confirm attendance. Claire responded immediately with enthusiasm. I'll be there. Can't wait to celebrate, Mom. David sent a thumbs up emoji. Max sent. Confirmed. I stared at my phone, reading and rereading the message. Planning Eleanor's 60th birthday dinner. Not Mom's birthday. Not we'd love to celebrate with you. Just a logistical announcement, like scheduling a dentist appointment. I should have known then. I should have recognized the tone, the distance, the transactional nature of it all. But I didn't. Or maybe I did and I just didn't want to believe it. I typed back. Thank you, Jessica. That's very kind of you. She didn't respond. The days leading up to my birthday were strange. I found myself both dreading it and hoping for it. Dreading because I knew somehow that it wouldn't be what I wanted. Hoping because maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. Maybe this would be the moment when Max remembered who I was and what I'd done for him. Maybe turning 60 would make him realize that I wouldn't be here forever. And he needed to repair what he'd broken before it was too late. I went shopping for something to wear. I wanted to look nice, to show Jessica and her silent judgments that I could fit into their world. I found a dark blue dress on sale, modest but elegant, and a pair of shoes that pinched my feet but looked expensive. I spent an hour on my makeup the day of the dinner, trying to cover the lines around my eyes, the age spots on my cheeks, the evidence of 60 years of living written across my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I'd always been the kind of woman who wore practical clothes and minimal makeup, who didn't have time or money for vanity. But here I was, painted and dressed up like I was going to a job interview instead of my own birthday celebration. I arrived at Rosario's at exactly 6:30. The restaurant was mid-range. Nice enough but not special. The kind of place you'd take work colleagues, not family on a meaningful occasion. Max and Jessica were already there, sitting in a booth with Emma in a high chair. Claire and David arrived a few minutes after me, and we all settled around the table. Happy birthday, Mom. Claire hugged me tight, genuine warmth in her embrace. She handed me a wrapped gift. From the weight and shape I could tell it was a book. I know you love mysteries. This one's supposed to be amazing. Thank you, sweetheart. I held the gift against my chest, Grateful for at least one person who seemed to remember I was a human being with interests and preferences. David shook my hand. We were still in the early stages of knowing each other, and smiled. Happy birthday, Eleanor. Claire's told me so much about you. Then I turned to Max and Jessica. Emma was eating crackers, getting crumbs everywhere, adorable in her obliviousness to the tension I could already feel building. Hi, Mom. Max stood and gave me a brief hug, the kind where your bodies barely touch. Happy birthday. Thank you for organizing this, Jessica, I said, trying to catch her eye. She nodded, looking at her phone. Of course. We ordered food. The conversation was stilted, forced. Claire tried valiantly to keep things light, asking about Emma's latest milestones, telling stories about her work at the hospital. David jumped in when he could, but he was an outsider too, not yet fluent in the complicated language of this family's dysfunction. Max talked about work, about a project he was leading, about his latest promotion. Jessica added details here and there, playing the role of the supportive wife. I listened, adding comments when appropriate, but mostly I just watched. I watched my son not look at me. I watched Jessica check her phone 3 times in 10 minutes. I watched Emma, this beautiful child I barely knew, living her life in a world where I was essentially a stranger. The food came. It was fine. Pasta and chicken and salad. We ate mostly in silence, broken occasionally by Claire's determined cheerfulness. Then Max reached under the table and pulled out a small gift bag. Before they bring out the cake, we got you something, Mom. He handed it to me across the table. The bag was light, barely anything in it. I opened it, pushing aside tissue paper, and pulled out the scarf. It was beautiful objectively. Cream-colored silk with a delicate pattern, soft and clearly expensive. The kind of thing I would never buy for myself because I'd never had the money for luxuries like silk scarves. Thanks for everything you've done, Max said, his voice flat, rehearsed. We thought you'd like something nice. I held the scarf, feeling the silk slip through my fingers. It's lovely. Thank you. And then he said it. Those 5 words that cracked something fundamental inside me. Hide your wrinkles, Mom. He said it casually with a little laugh, like it was a joke we were both in on. Jessica smiled, actually smiled, and looked away. Claire's fork stopped halfway to her mouth, her eyes going wide. What? I heard myself say, my voice barely a whisper. The scarf. You can use it to cover up, you know. He gestured vaguely at his own neck. You're always complaining about how you're aging. This way you don't have to worry about it so much. The restaurant noise, the clinking dishes, the other conversations, the soft music playing overhead. All of it faded into a dull roar. I looked at my son, this man I'd sacrificed everything for, and I didn't recognize him. I looked at Jessica, and I saw satisfaction in her eyes. I looked at Claire and I saw horror. I've never complained about aging, I said slowly. Not once. Well, not complained exactly. But you've mentioned it. The lines, the gray hair. I just thought this would help. He genuinely didn't understand. He genuinely thought he was being helpful, giving me a tool to hide the evidence of 60 years of living, as if my wrinkles were something shameful instead of proof that I'd survived. As if the lines on my face weren't earned through tears and laughter and worry and joy. As if I should be embarrassed about growing older instead of grateful to still be here. I folded the scarf carefully, placed it back in the bag, and set it on the table. My hands were steady, but inside that crack was spreading, branching out like lightning across my chest. Thank you, I said again, because what else could I say? Claire reached across the table and grabbed my hand, squeezing hard. Her eyes were wet. She knew. She understood exactly what had just happened. The waitress appeared then with the birthday cake. It was small, generic, from the grocery store bakery section. The kind that costs maybe $15. Chocolate with white frosting and happy birthday written in basic script. No personalization. No thought. Just a cake because you're supposed to have a cake at birthday dinners. The waitress set it in front of me, and the table fell silent. Someone had stuck 6 candles in the top. Not 60, just 6 random candles from a drawer somewhere. Claire started singing Happy Birthday. Her voice a little too loud, a little too insistent. David joined in. Max and Jessica mumbled along. I looked around the table as they sang. Claire was crying now, not even trying to hide it. David looked uncomfortable. Jessica was checking her phone again. And Max was looking at the table, at his plate, at the wall, anywhere but at me. When they finished singing, they all looked at me, waiting for me to blow out the candles. But no one could look me in the eye. Not Max. Not Jessica. Not even little Emma, who was more interested in the candles' flames than in her grandmother. I took a breath to blow them out, and that's when I felt it fully. The complete and total understanding that I had become invisible to my own son. That everything I'd done, every sacrifice I'd made, every hour I'd worked, every dream I'd deferred, none of it mattered. I'd raised a man who was ashamed of me, who wanted me to hide myself, to make myself smaller, to be less visible so I wouldn't embarrass him in front of his wife and her wealthy family. I blew out the candles and everyone clapped politely. The waitress cut the cake and distributed slices. I took one bite and tasted nothing. We sat there for another 20 minutes and I participated in conversation, but I couldn't tell you what we talked about. I was somewhere else, watching this scene from a distance, seeing myself as they must see me. An old woman, a burden, someone to tolerate out of obligation. When the check came, Max paid. At least he did that. Then we all stood to leave and everyone hugged me. Claire held on longer than necessary, whispering, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." And I patted her back and told her it was fine, even though it wasn't. Max and Jessica gathered up Emma and her things, and as they were walking toward the door, I heard Jessica say to Max, "Well, that's done for another year. That's done for another year." Like my birthday was an item on a to-do list. Checkbox. Acknowledge mother's existence. Move on. I drove home in the dark, the scarf sitting in its bag on the passenger seat. I pulled into my driveway, walked into my small house, the house I'd fought so hard to keep after Robert died, the house I'd raised my children in, and I sat down at my kitchen table. And then finally I let myself break. I cried like I hadn't cried since Robert died. I cried for all the years of sacrifice that meant nothing. I cried for the relationship with my granddaughter that I'd never have. I cried for the son I'd lost somewhere along the way. The sweet boy who'd told me he didn't need basketball shoes because he understood I was doing my best. That boy was gone. In his place was a man I didn't know. A man who'd learned from his wife and her family that some people matter and some people don't. That success means leaving behind where you came from. That mothers are useful when you need them and inconvenient when you don't. I cried until I had no tears left. And then in the silence of my empty house, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this define the rest of my life. I wasn't going to spend whatever years I had left begging for crumbs of affection from someone who'd made it clear I didn't matter. I wasn't going to keep pretending that if I just tried harder, loved more, asked for less, things would somehow get better. Something had to change. And since Max clearly wasn't going to change, it had to be me. What would you have done if you were in my place? Would you have kept trying to repair a relationship that seemed beyond repair? Would you have walked away? Would you have confronted them? I really want to know, because in that moment, sitting at my kitchen table at midnight on my 60th birthday, I felt more lost than I'd felt in 30 years. But I didn't stay lost for long. Because the next morning, something unexpected happened that changed everything. Claire called me at 7 a.m. I was still in bed, exhausted from crying, my eyes swollen and my head aching. I almost didn't answer, but I knew Claire wouldn't call this early unless it was important. "Mom." Her voice was tight with anger. "I need to tell you something, but you have to promise not to fly off the handle until I'm done talking." I sat up, suddenly alert. What happened? Last night after dinner, I went to Max's house. I told Jessica I wanted to play with Emma for a bit, and she let me come over. But I wasn't there to play with Emma. I was there to confront Max about how he treated you. My heart started pounding. "Claire, you didn't need to." "Mom, please. Let me finish." She took a breath, and I could hear she was trying not to cry. I asked Max what the hell was wrong with him. How he could give you a scarf and tell you to hide your wrinkles. How he could make your birthday about his own discomfort with your age. And do you know what he said? I waited, gripping the phone. He said, and I quote, "Jessica thinks it's embarrassing how Mom dresses and presents herself. She's always talking about it. About how uncomfortable she feels when her friends meet Mom." I was trying to help. Mom needs to understand that at her age, she should make more of an effort to look presentable. The words hit me like physical blows. I'd known on some level that Jessica influenced Max's behavior toward me. But hearing it stated so baldly, Hearing that they discussed me like I was a project to be fixed made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. There's more, Claire continued, her voice shaking now. I pushed him. I asked why he barely lets you see Emma. And he said, Mom, I'm so angry I can barely say this. He said that Jessica doesn't want Emma to get too attached to you because it complicates things. When I asked what things, he said that Jessica's mother is Emma's primary grandmother, and having two grandmothers with equal involvement would be confusing for Emma. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up completely. So I asked him if he even loved you anymore, Claire said. And he looked at me like I was being dramatic. He said, Of course I love Mom. But love doesn't mean I have to pretend she fits into our lifestyle. Jessica's family has standards and Mom doesn't meet them. That's just reality. It's not personal. Not personal. My son's rejection of me, his shame of me, his systematic exclusion of me from his life and his daughter's life, none of it was personal. Mom, say something, Claire whispered. I don't know what to say. I told him he's an ungrateful asshole. I told him that everything he has, every opportunity he got, came from you working yourself to death for years. I told him that if he can't see how amazing you are, how much you sacrificed, then he doesn't deserve to call himself your son. And then I left. Oh, Claire. I'm not done. Her voice hardened. This morning Jessica called me. She said I was out of line, that I don't understand their family dynamics, and that I need to apologize to Max for attacking him in his own home. She said that it's natural for Max to want to maintain certain standards now that he's achieved success, and that expecting him to pretend his mother is something she's not is unfair to him. She said that. Word for word. And then she said something that made me want to drive back there and slap her. She said, Eleanor had her chance to be more in life. She chose to work menial jobs and live a small life. Max has chosen differently, and we need to respect that. I closed my eyes, and in the darkness behind my eyelids, I saw my entire relationship with Max play out like a film reel. Every sacrifice, every missed opportunity, every time I'd chosen him over myself. I saw myself at 32 scrubbing toilets at midnight so he could have a home. I saw myself at 40 taking out loans I couldn't afford so he could go to college. I saw myself at 55 babysitting for Jessica's friends' children for extra money so I could buy Max and Jessica an expensive wedding gift. And I saw them now, him and Jessica, sitting in their expensive house, discussing how embarrassing I was. How I didn't fit their standards. How my life of sacrifice was evidence of failure rather than proof of love. Mom, Claire said, her voice softer now. I know you're hurting, but I need you to hear me. You don't deserve this. You deserve to be cherished and honored and respected. And if Max can't give you that, then maybe it's time to. To what? I asked. To let him go. To stop trying. To focus on your own life instead of waiting for him to remember. He has a mother who loves him. Let him go. The words hung in the air like smoke. Could I do that? Could I actually walk away from my own son? I need to think, I told Claire. I know. I love you, Mom. So much. And I'm here, okay? Whatever you need, I'm here. We hung up and I sat in my bed, watching morning light creep across my bedroom walls. The same walls I'd painted 25 years ago, when Max was little and had helped me, getting more paint on himself than on the walls, both of us laughing until our sides ached. That Max was gone, and I needed to accept that. But acceptance didn't mean surrender. And as I sat there, something began to crystallize in my mind. A plan. A way forward that didn't involve begging for love from someone who'd made it clear I wasn't worth loving. I got up, took a shower, got dressed. I made coffee and toast. And then I sat down at my computer and started doing research. Over the next 2 weeks, I barely spoke to Max. He called once, leaving a voicemail that said, Hey Mom, Claire told me she talked to you. I don't know what she said, but I hope you know I care about you. Just thought I'd check in. I didn't call him back. Instead, I spent my time learning. About estate planning. About wills and trusts. About beneficiaries and inheritance laws. About how to legally protect assets and ensure they go to the people you choose, under the conditions you choose. I also spent time thinking about my life. Really thinking about it, maybe for the first time since Robert died. I'd spent 28 years in survival mode, focused entirely on getting my children through childhood and into successful adulthood. But what about me? What about Eleanor? I was 60 years old. I'd finally paid off the last of Max's student loans 2 years ago. I'd retired from the dental office with a small pension. I had some savings, not much but enough. My house was paid off. For the first time in my adult life, I had no dependents, no debt, and no obligations. I was free. And I'd been so focused on trying to maintain a relationship with a son who didn't want me that I hadn't even noticed. I started small. I joined a book club at the local library, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I signed up for a watercolor painting class at the community center. I bought myself new clothes, not expensive but new, things I actually liked instead of whatever was cheapest. I got my hair cut and colored by a professional for the first time in a decade. Claire noticed immediately. She came to visit 2 weeks after my birthday, and when she walked in and saw me, her eyes went wide. "Mom, you look different." "Different good or different bad?" "Different amazing. You're glowing. What's going on?" I poured us both tea and sat down at the kitchen table. "I've been thinking about what you said. About letting go. And you were right." Claire reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry. I know that's not what you wanted to hear." "No, it wasn't. But it was what I needed to hear." I squeezed her hand. "I've spent almost 30 years defining myself entirely by my role as a mother. And I was a good mother, Claire. I know I was. I gave you and Max everything I had. You were an incredible mother. But I can't force Max to appreciate that. I can't make him love me the way I need to be loved. And I'm done trying. I'm done making myself smaller so he doesn't have to feel uncomfortable about where he came from. I'm done apologizing for existing." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so proud of you." "Don't be proud yet. I'm not done." I got up and went to my bedroom, returning with a folder full of documents. I'd spent the past 2 weeks not just thinking but planning. And now it was time to put that plan into action. "I've made some decisions," I told Claire. "And I wanted you to be the first to know." I opened the folder and showed her what I'd done. I'd rewritten my will. I'd created a trust. I'd made arrangements that would ensure my money, my house, and everything I owned would go exactly where I wanted it to go, with exactly the conditions I wanted attached. As Claire read through the documents, her expression changed from confusion to understanding to something like fierce satisfaction. "Mom, this is perfect." "I know. And there's more." Over the next hour, I laid out my entire plan. What I was going to do, how I was going to do it, and what I hoped would come of it. Claire listened, occasionally interrupting with questions or suggestions, and by the time I was finished, we were both smiling. "When are you going to tell Max?" she asked. "Not yet. First, I need to live my life for a while. I need to remember who I am outside of being his mother. And I need to see if he even notices that I've stopped reaching out. What if he doesn't notice? Then I'll have my answer, won't I?" Claire stayed for dinner that night. We cooked together, laughing and talking about everything except Max and Jessica. We talked about her upcoming wedding, about David and his family, about her work at the hospital. We talked about my painting class and the book I was reading. We talked about maybe taking a trip together, just the two of us, somewhere neither of us had ever been. As she was leaving, she hugged me tight. "I'm glad you're doing this, Mom. I'm glad you're choosing yourself for once." "So am I, sweetheart." "So am I." After she left, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine. Something else I'd never done, drink wine alone just because I wanted to, and I thought about Max. I wondered if he was thinking about me. I wondered if he'd noticed that I hadn't called him back. I wondered if he cared. But for the first time in years, those thoughts didn't hurt as much as they used to, because I was starting to understand something important. His rejection of me said everything about him and nothing about me. I hadn't failed as a mother. I'd succeeded. I'd raised him, educated him, launched him into the world. What he chose to do with that, how he chose to treat the person who'd given him everything, that was on him, not me. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. Max didn't call. Didn't text. Didn't reach out at all. It was like once he'd fulfilled his obligation at my birthday dinner, I ceased to exist for him. But I was existing more fully than I had in years. I went to my book club and made friends with women my own age who actually wanted to hear what I had to say. I painted terrible watercolors and laughed at how bad they were. I went to movies by myself in the middle of the day. I bought fancy coffee at the expensive place downtown and sat in the sun reading novels. I remembered what it felt like to be Eleanor, not just someone's mother. And then 6 weeks after my birthday, Jessica called. I was in my garden, another new hobby, planting tomatoes when my phone rang. I almost didn't answer when I saw her name, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, Jessica. Eleanor. Her voice was clipped, efficient. I'm calling because we need you to babysit Emma next Saturday. We have an event we need to attend, and our usual nanny is unavailable. Not, would you like to see your granddaughter? Not, we thought it would be nice for Emma to spend time with you. Just a demand dressed up as a request. I'm not available next Saturday, I said calmly. There was a pause. What do you mean you're not available? I have plans. What plans? That's really none of your business, Jessica. Another pause, longer this time. Eleanor, this is important. It's a work event for Max. We need childcare. Then I suggest you find it elsewhere. I'm sure there are services you can call. Are you seriously refusing to help your own son? Something hot flared in my chest, but I kept my voice level. Jessica, in the 2.5 years since Emma was born, you've allowed me to see her 14 times. You've made it clear that I'm not the kind of grandmother you want in her life. So no, I'm not going to rearrange my schedule to provide you with convenient, free childcare when it suits you. This is ridiculous. Max said you could be difficult, but I didn't think. Max said I could be difficult? I laughed and it felt good. Tell me, Jessica, what else has Max said about me? I don't have time for this. I'm going to talk to Max. You do that. She hung up on me. I set my phone down on the porch steps and went back to my tomato plants, and I was surprised to find that my hands were steady. I just stood up to Jessica. Really stood up to her. And instead of feeling guilty or anxious, I felt powerful. An hour later, Max called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail again. Then he texted. Mom, call me. This is important. I finished my gardening, went inside, took a shower, and made myself dinner. Only then, after I'd eaten and cleaned up, did I call him back. Mom, what the hell? His voice was sharp, angry. Jessica said you refused to watch Emma. That's correct. Why? We need help. Max, I'm not a service you can call when you need something and ignore when you don't. That's not fair. I don't ignore you. Really? When was the last time you called me just to talk? When was the last time you invited me over without needing something? When was the last time you let me spend time with Emma, just because I'm her grandmother? Silence. I'll tell you when, I continued. Never. At least not in the past 2 years. You call me when you need a house sitter. Jessica calls when she needs a babysitter. But neither of you calls just to include me in your lives. Mom, you're being dramatic. Don't. My voice came out harder than I intended. Don't tell me I'm being dramatic. Don't minimize my feelings. I've spent 6 weeks thinking about our relationship, Max, and I've come to some conclusions. What conclusions? That I deserve better than how you've been treating me. That I spent 28 years sacrificing everything for you, and you've repaid me by being ashamed of me. That your wife looks down on me and you've allowed it. That you've let her push me out of your life and Emma's life because I don't meet her standards. That's not, Jessica doesn't. Max, I heard what you said to Claire. She told me everything. About how Jessica thinks I'm embarrassing. About how you think I should make more effort to be presentable. About how you've decided Jessica's mother should be Emma's primary grandmother, because having me around complicates things. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was defensive. Claire had no right to tell you that. That was a private conversation. So you're not denying it. I'm saying, look, Mom, I'm sorry if your feelings were hurt, but you have to understand Jessica comes from a different background. Her family has certain expectations. And yeah, sometimes that means making adjustments. Adjustments? Is that what you call erasing your mother from your life? I'm not erasing you. You're being ridiculous. Then tell me, Max. When was the last time you introduced me to your friends? When was the last time you posted a photo of me on social media? When was the last time you talked about me at work, or mentioned where you came from, or acknowledged that your success was built on my back? Silence again. That's what I thought, I said quietly. You know what, Max? I'm tired. I'm 60 years old, And I'm tired of begging you to love me. I'm tired of trying to fit into a space in your life that you've made clear I don't belong in. So I'm done. Done with what? Done trying. Done waiting for you to remember that I'm your mother. Done accepting crumbs of affection when I deserve a feast. I'm going to live my life, Max. And if you decide someday that you want me in yours, really want me there, not just as a convenient babysitter but as your mother, then you know where to find me. Mom, come on. I need to go. Goodbye, Max. I hung up before he could respond. My heart was pounding, adrenaline flooding my system. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. I'd drawn a boundary and stuck to it. The phone rang again immediately. Max. I declined the call. He called 2 more times that evening. I declined both calls. Then the text started. Mom, you're overreacting. Can we please talk about this like adults? I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but this is too much. You're really going to throw away our relationship over a misunderstanding? I read each text and I didn't respond to any of them, because there was no misunderstanding. For the first time, both of us were seeing our relationship clearly. The difference was that I'd accepted the truth, and he was still trying to pretend it was something other than what it was. Claire called an hour later. Mom, Max called me. He's furious. He says you're being unreasonable and that I poisoned you against him. What do you think? I think you're being brave. And I think he's scared because he's losing control of the narrative. For years he's been able to treat you however he wants because you've always been there. Always willing to accept whatever scraps he threw your way. Now you're not, and he doesn't know how to handle it. I'm scared, Claire. I know. But you're also free. For the first time in your life, you're really free. She was right. I was scared. But I was also free. And freedom I was discovering was worth the fear. The next few months were strange. It felt like I was living 2 lives simultaneously. The one I'd always known, and a new one that was just beginning to take shape. Max didn't call again after that first night. Neither did Jessica. It was like I'd been officially dismissed from their lives, and honestly it was a relief. No more waiting for the phone to ring. No more hoping that this would be the day they'd invite me over. No more disappointment. Instead, I filled my life with things that actually brought me joy. My book club became a regular Thursday night event, and I'd made real friends there. Women who invited me to lunch, who called to check in, who actually seemed to like spending time with me. My painting class led to an art show at the community center, and even though my watercolors were objectively terrible, it felt amazing to have created something just for the sake of creating it. I started volunteering at the local food bank, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. The work was physically demanding but emotionally fulfilling. I met people from all walks of life, some struggling, some recovering, all just trying to survive. It gave me perspective. Whatever Max had done to me, I still had a roof over my head, food in my refrigerator, and my health. I still had Claire and David. I still had myself. Claire called every few days and we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. Her wedding was coming up in 4 months, and she wanted me involved in every detail. We went shopping for her dress together, and when she tried on the one she eventually chose, she looked at me in the mirror and said, "I wish Max could see you now, Mom. I wish he could see how happy you are." "Do I seem happy?" I asked, surprised. "You seem alive. Really alive. For the first time in my memory, you seem like you're living for yourself instead of for everyone else." That night I thought about what she'd said. Was I happy? I wasn't sure. But I was something better than happy. I was becoming whole. 3 months after our phone call, Max reached out again. This time it was an email, which felt cowardly but also typical. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation. I don't think you're being fair, but I also don't want to fight with you. Jessica and I are having a party for Emma's 3rd birthday next month. We'd like you to come. Let me know. Max." I read the email 3 times. We'd like you to come. Not we'd love for you to be there. Not Emma misses her grandmother. Just a formal invitation, the kind you'd send to a distant relative you felt obligated to include. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sat with it. I thought about showing up to that party and watching Jessica's mother hold Emma, take pictures with her, be the grandmother I should have been allowed to be. I thought about making polite conversation with Jessica's friends, while they silently judged my outfit or my hair, or whatever else they decided was wrong with me. I thought about Max introducing me as my mother, in that tone that implied I was a burden he had to carry. And then I thought about my Thursday book club meeting that was scheduled for the same day. About how much I'd been looking forward to discussing the novel we'd all read. About the lunch my friend Margaret had suggested we grab afterward at that new cafe downtown. 2 days later I responded, Max, thank you for the invitation, but I won't be able to attend. I have prior commitments that day. I hope Emma has a wonderful birthday. Mom. Short. Polite. Final. He didn't respond to that email. But Jessica did 2 days later. Eleanor. I'm frankly shocked that you would miss your granddaughter's birthday party over prior commitments. Whatever issues you have with Max and me, Emma is an innocent child who deserves to have her grandmother at her birthday. Your selfishness is showing. Jessica. I read that email and laughed. Actually laughed out loud. The audacity of this woman, who'd spent 2.5 years systematically excluding me from Emma's life, now accusing me of being selfish for not rearranging my schedule to attend a party I clearly wasn't wanted at. I didn't respond to Jessica's email. There was nothing to say. She'd revealed herself completely, and there was no point in engaging. But that email did something important. It crystallized my resolve. These people, my son and his wife, were never going to change. They were never going to wake up one day and realize how badly they treated me. They were never going to apologize or make amends. And I was never going to get the relationship with Emma that I'd wanted. It was time to move forward with the rest of my plan. I called my lawyer, a woman named Patricia whom I'd hired specifically to help me with my estate planning. We'd been working together for months now, and she'd helped me structure everything exactly how I wanted it. Patricia, I'm ready, I told her. Let's finalize everything. Are you sure? She asked. Once we file these documents, it's done. You can change them later, but everyone involved will know what's currently in place. I'm sure. All right then. I'll have everything ready by the end of the week. 2 weeks later, I sent Max and Jessica a certified letter. Inside was a copy of my updated will, along with a detailed letter explaining my decisions. The will was simple in its structure but profound in its message. My house would go to Claire. The majority of my savings would go to Claire. My personal belongings would go to Claire. For Max, I'd established a trust fund for Emma, $50,000 that she could access when she turned 25 with one condition. She had to meet with me at least once a year for the 5 years leading up to her 25th birthday. If Max and Jessica prevented these meetings, the money would default to a scholarship fund I'd established for first-generation college students. For Max personally, I left exactly $1. Not to be cruel, but to make it clear that his exclusion was intentional, not an oversight. But more important than the will was the letter. I'd spent weeks writing it, revising it, making sure every word said exactly what I needed to say. Dear Max, by now you've seen my will. I want you to understand why I've made the decisions I've made. For 28 years I gave you everything. I worked 3 jobs so you could have a home, food, and opportunities. I sacrificed my own education, my own career, my own dreams so that yours could come true. I never asked for gratitude. I never asked to be repaid. I did it because I loved you, and that's what mothers do. But somewhere along the way you forgot where you came from. Or maybe you didn't forget. Maybe you just decided it wasn't convenient to remember. You married a woman who looks down on people like me. People who work with their hands and live modest lives. And instead of defending me, instead of honoring the sacrifices I made for you, you joined her in her judgment. You told your sister that I'm embarrassing, that I don't fit into your lifestyle, that having me around complicates things. You gave me a scarf and told me to hide my wrinkles, as if the physical evidence of my 60 years of life, years spent largely in service to you, was something shameful. You systematically excluded me from your daughter's life, allowing your wife's mother to take the place that should have been mine. You called me only when you needed something, and ignored me when you didn't. You treated me like a servant rather than your mother. I kept waiting for you to realize what you were doing. I kept hoping you'd wake up and remember who I was and what I'd done for you. But you never did. And I've finally accepted that you never will. So this is where we are. I've left almost everything to your sister, who has never once made me feel like I was a burden or an embarrassment, who calls me just to talk, who includes me in her life because she wants me there, not because she needs something from me. I've left money for Emma because she's innocent in all of this, and I hope that someday when she's old enough to understand, she'll want to know her grandmother. If you prevent that from happening, you'll be taking something valuable from your own daughter. But that will be your choice just like everything else has been your choice. I'm not writing this to hurt you, Max. I'm writing this because I need you to understand that actions have consequences. You chose Jessica's family over your own mother. You chose status and appearances over love and loyalty. You chose comfort over courage. These were all your choices. And now you have to live with them. I hope someday you'll understand what you've lost. I hope someday, maybe when Emma is older and you see yourself through her eyes, you'll realize what it means to be a parent. To sacrifice everything and ask for nothing in return, only to be discarded when you're no longer convenient. I will always love you, Max. But I will never again beg for your love in return. Eleanor. I mailed the letter and the will on a Friday morning. By Saturday afternoon my phone was exploding. Max called 17 times. Jessica called 11 times. I didn't answer any of them. The voicemails they left ranged from shocked to angry to accusatory. Max's final message that day said, "Mom, you can't be serious. We need to talk about this. This is insane. You're trying to manipulate me with money. That's not okay." Manipulate him with money. The irony was almost funny. As if I hadn't spent my entire adult life giving him money. For school, for his first apartment, for his wedding, for countless other things he'd needed, and I'd somehow found a way to provide even when I had nothing. Jessica's voicemails were more direct. "This is emotional blackmail, Eleanor. If you think we're going to let you manipulate us into treating you a certain way, you're wrong. We have nothing to apologize for. You're the one who's been unreasonable." I listened to every voicemail and then I saved them. Because one day maybe Emma would be old enough to understand. And if she wanted to know what happened between us, I'd have evidence. Not he said, she said, but actual recordings of her parents' response to being held accountable. Claire called Sunday morning, laughing so hard she could barely speak. "Mom. Oh my God, Mom. Max called me last night at 1 a.m. 1 in the morning. He was so angry he could barely form sentences. He kept saying, 'You can't do this, it's not fair, you're trying to punish him.' What did you say?" I told him that actions have consequences. That he'd spent years treating you like garbage. And now he was experiencing the results of his choices. Then I told him I fully support everything you've done, and if he has a problem with it, he can take it up with you directly instead of using me as a mediator. Then I hung up on him. Claire. No, Mom. I'm done protecting his feelings at the expense of yours. He made his bed. He can lie in it. Over the next week, the calls and messages continued. Max tried different tactics: anger, guilt, bargaining. Jessica's messages became increasingly hostile. But I didn't respond to any of them. There was nothing to say. I'd said everything I needed to say in that letter. 2 weeks after I'd sent the will and letter, something unexpected happened. My doorbell rang on a Tuesday evening, and when I looked through the peephole, I saw Max standing on my porch. Alone. I hadn't seen him in person since my birthday dinner 4 months ago. He looked tired, older somehow. Good, I thought with a satisfaction that surprised me. Let him feel even a fraction of what I felt. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "Max. Mom. Can we talk?" "I don't know. Can we? Or are you just here to tell me again how unreasonable I'm being?" He flinched. I want to talk. Really talk. Please." I studied his face, looking for sincerity. What I saw was complicated. Yes, there was manipulation there, the practiced expression of someone who was used to getting what he wanted. But there was also something else. Something that might have been genuine discomfort, or even the beginnings of realization. 5 minutes, I said, stepping back to let him in. He walked into my living room, looking around like he was seeing it for the first time. Maybe he was. Maybe he'd been so busy judging it, comparing it to his house with its expensive furniture and designer decor, that he'd never actually seen it. "Your letter," he started, sitting down on my couch. "It was harsh. It was honest. You make me sound like a terrible person. I described your actions, Max. If that makes you sound like a terrible person, maybe you should think about your actions." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Jessica's furious. She says you're trying to manipulate us." "Of course she does. Because Jessica can't conceive of a world where her actions have consequences. Where treating people badly might result in them not wanting to give you things. She's not that bad, Mom. Isn't she? She spent 2.5 years keeping me away from Emma. She talks about me behind my back. She looks down on me because I don't meet her standards. And you've let her. You've enabled every bit of it. That's not entirely fair. Max. I sat down across from him, forcing him to meet my eyes. Do you remember when you were 12, and you asked me about those basketball shoes? Do you remember what you said when I told you I couldn't afford them? He looked confused by the change of subject. No, not really. You said, I know, Mom. It's okay. I don't need those shoes anyway. You were 12 years old and you understood that I was doing my best. You understood sacrifice. You understood love. Where is this going? What happened to that boy? What happened to the kid who understood that things have value beyond their price tags? Who knew that love and sacrifice were worth more than status and appearances? He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. I grew up. I moved on. I wanted different things. There's nothing wrong with wanting different things, Max. There's nothing wrong with being successful or wanting nice things. But there's everything wrong with stepping on the people who helped you get there. With being ashamed of where you came from. With treating your own mother like she's an embarrassment you need to hide. I never said you were an embarrassment. You told Claire I was. You told her Jessica thinks I'm embarrassing, and you agreed with her. You gave me a scarf and told me to hide my wrinkles. You excluded me from Emma's life because having me around complicates things. Max, you did everything except literally say the words I'm ashamed of you. But you might as well have. He looked down at his hands. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't want you to say anything. I want you to understand. I want you to really think about what you've done, not just in the past few months but in the past few years. And I want you to decide who you want to be. The man who values people based on their bank accounts and their address? Or the man who remembers where he came from and honors the people who sacrificed for him? That's not fair. You're making this black and white when it's not. Actually, Max, it really is. Either you value me as your mother, as a person who loves you, or you don't. Either you want me in your life and Emma's life or you don't. There's no middle ground anymore. I'm done accepting crumbs. He stood up abruptly. I can't do this right now. This is too much. Then I think you should leave. He walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. The will. You're really leaving me $1. Yes. That's cruel, Mom. That's deliberately cruel. No, Max, cruel is making your mother feel like she needs to hide her wrinkles. Cruel is excluding her from her granddaughter's life. Cruel is treating her like an inconvenient obligation instead of a person you love. What I'm doing isn't cruelty. It's consequences. He left without another word. I watched through the window as he sat in his car for almost 10 minutes, just staring at my house. Then he drove away. I didn't cry this time. I didn't feel that same crushing pain I'd felt at the birthday dinner. What I felt was something more like sadness for what could have been, mixed with relief that I'd finally stood my ground. Claire called an hour later. Max just called me. Again. He's even more upset now. What did you say to him? The truth. I told him the truth and he couldn't handle it. Good. Let him sit with it. Let him actually think about his actions for once instead of just defending them. But Max didn't sit with it. Instead, over the next few weeks, he launched what I can only describe as a campaign to change my mind. He sent flowers with cards that said things like, I'm sorry we've had disagreements, and I want us to move past this. He had Jessica call Claire to try to get her to mediate. He even sent Emma's picture in a frame with a note. She misses her grandmother. That last one almost broke me. Almost. Because it was manipulative in the worst way, using a child who barely knew me to try to leverage my emotions. Emma didn't miss me. How could she? She'd seen me so few times she probably didn't even remember who I was. I didn't respond to any of it. Not the flowers, not the messages, not the framed picture that now sat on my shelf like an indictment of everything that had gone wrong. And then, 5 weeks after our conversation in my living room, something happened that changed everything again. Jessica called. Not Max, Jessica. And for the first time since I'd known her, She didn't sound imperious or dismissive. She sounded scared. Eleanor. Her voice was shaking. I need to talk to you. Can you please answer your phone? It's important. It's about Max. My heart dropped. Whatever our issues, he was still my son. What's wrong? Is he hurt? No. But, please, can I come over? I need to talk to you in person. 20 minutes later, Jessica was sitting in my living room. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing yoga pants and a sweatshirt. I'd never seen her look anything less than perfectly put together. What's going on? I asked, not bothering with pleasantries. She took a deep breath. Max is miserable. He's not sleeping. He barely eats. He's distracted at work. He sits in Emma's room at night and just stares at nothing. Eleanor, I'm worried about him. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, concern for Max, but also a vindictive satisfaction that he was finally feeling something. And you're telling me this, why? Because it's my fault. She looked up at me and there were tears in her eyes. All of it. The way he's treated you. The way I've talked about you. The way we've excluded you from Emma's life. It's been me pushing him, and he's gone along with it because I'm his wife and he loves me and he wanted to make me happy. I sat back, genuinely surprised. This was not what I'd expected. Go on. My mother. She paused, struggling with the words. My mother has very specific ideas about what success looks like. About the kind of people we should associate with. And when I married Max, she made it clear that his background was not ideal. That his family wasn't the kind of family she'd hoped I'd marry into. So you decided I wasn't good enough for you. Yes. She said it plainly without trying to soften it. I did. And I convinced Max that keeping you at a distance was better for everyone. That Emma would be confused having two grandmothers who were so different. That you wouldn't understand our lifestyle. I made him believe that loving you and including you were incompatible with the life we were building. Why are you telling me this now? Because he showed me your letter. The one you sent with the will. And I read it and I saw myself. I saw what I'd become. This person who judges others based on what they have instead of who they are. This person who'd convinced my husband to abandon his mother because she didn't fit my image of what a proper family should look like. She was crying now, really crying. And then I watched Max fall apart. I watched him realize what he'd lost. And I understood that I'd done this. I'd taken a man who loved his mother and turned him into someone who treated her like garbage because I thought I was better than you. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I'm so sorry. I can't undo what I've done. I can't give you back the years with Emma that I stole from you. But I'm here and I'm telling you the truth, and I'm begging you to please give us a chance to make this right. I looked at this woman who'd caused me so much pain, who'd systematically poisoned my relationship with my son, and I tried to feel something. Anger maybe. Vindication. But what I felt instead was just tired. Jessica, I appreciate you coming here. I appreciate you taking responsibility. But here's the thing. This isn't just about you. Yes, you influenced Max. But Max is a grown man. He made his own choices. He chose to go along with your judgment of me. He chose to exclude me from his life. He chose to give me a scarf and tell me to hide my wrinkles. Those were his choices, Jessica. Not yours. You might have planted the seeds, but he watered them. He let them grow. Jessica wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I know. But he's suffering now. He's really suffering. And I don't know how to help him because I'm the one who caused this. Good. She looked up at me, shocked. What? I said good. Let him suffer. Let him feel even a fraction of what I've felt for the past 3 years. Let him understand what it's like to lose someone you love, because they've decided you're not good enough. Eleanor, please. I'm not finished. My voice was harder now. You come here, you cry, you apologize, and you expect what? That I'll just forgive everything? That I'll go back to begging for scraps from your table? That I'll pretend the past 3 years didn't happen because you finally realized you were wrong? No, Do you have any idea what it feels like to work 3 jobs for years? To sacrifice every dream you ever had so your child can have opportunities? To go without food sometimes so he can have school supplies? To wear the same clothes for years because every penny goes to his future? Do you have any idea what that's like? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. And then to watch that child grow up and succeed, and instead of being proud of where he came from, instead of honoring the sacrifices that got him there, he's ashamed. He hides you. He excludes you. He tells you to cover up your wrinkles like they're something shameful instead of proof that you survived long enough to have them. I stood up, and Jessica stood too, looking small and frightened in a way I'd never seen her look before. You don't get to fix this with one apology, Jessica. You don't get to undo years of cruelty and exclusion with tears and admissions of guilt. And Max doesn't get to suddenly realize I'm valuable now that there's money on the line. That's not why. Isn't it? He didn't care when I had nothing to give him. He didn't care when I was just an embarrassing mother he wanted to keep hidden. But now there's a will that leaves him almost nothing. And suddenly he's miserable? Suddenly you're both here apologizing. Jessica's face crumpled. It's not just about the money. He loves you. He does. He's just been so confused, so lost. I confused him. I made him think loving you and having the life we built were mutually exclusive. And whose fault is that? I asked quietly. Not mine. I never asked him to choose. I never said he couldn't have nice things or be successful or marry you. I just wanted to be included. I just wanted to be loved. And you both decided that was asking too much. Jessica sank back down onto the couch, sobbing openly now. I should have felt victorious. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For them to understand, to suffer, to realize what they'd done? But watching her cry, I just felt empty. Because none of this would bring back the lost time with Emma. None of this would erase the hurt of that birthday dinner or the months of being ignored. None of this would make me trust my son again. I need you to leave now, I said gently. I need to think. Jessica stood up, wiping her face. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you, whether you forgive me or not. I'm going to make sure Emma knows her grandmother. I'm going to make sure Max understands what he almost lost forever. Why now, Jessica? Why this sudden change of heart? She was quiet for a moment, then said, Because last night Emma asked where Grandma Eleanor was. She's been seeing my mother constantly, and she asked why she has a Grandma Patricia but barely knows her Grandma Eleanor. And Max. He broke down. He completely broke down. He told her it was his fault, that he'd been a bad son, that he'd pushed you away. And Emma asked why, and he couldn't answer her. He couldn't explain to his 3-year-old daughter why he'd abandoned his own mother. She looked at me, and I saw genuine anguish in her face. I watched my husband sob in front of our daughter because he finally understood what he'd done. And I realized that I'd done that to him. I turned him into someone who would hurt his own mother. I turned him into someone his daughter would eventually be ashamed of. After she left, I sat in my living room for hours. I thought about Max as a little boy, helping me paint these walls. I thought about him as a teenager, proud to show me his report cards. I thought about his college graduation, how he'd hugged me and thanked me for everything I'd done. I thought about the man he'd been before Jessica, and the man he'd become after. And I thought about Emma, a little girl who was innocent in all of this, who deserved to know both her grandmothers, who deserved better than to be a pawn in her parents' games of status and image. But I also thought about myself. About the woman I'd become in the past 6 months. The woman who'd learned to value herself, to set boundaries, to refuse to accept less than she deserved. Could I let Max back into my life without losing that woman? Could I forgive without forgetting? Could I rebuild without pretending the destruction had never happened? I didn't know. And I wasn't sure I was ready to figure it out. 3 days later, I got an email from Max. Not a text, not a voicemail, but a carefully written email that I could tell he'd spent time on. Mom, I'm not going to make excuses. I'm not going to explain or justify or ask you to see things from my perspective. I'm just going to tell you the truth. You're right. About everything. I was ashamed of you. Not because of anything you did, but because I was ashamed of where I came from. When I got to college and met people who'd grown up with money, with opportunities I'd never had, I felt inferior. I felt like I had to hide my background to fit in. And that meant hiding you. When I met Jessica and her family, that feeling got worse. Her parents are successful, educated, sophisticated. They have connections and resources and all the things I'd always wanted. And being with Jessica meant I could have those things too. But it also meant maintaining a certain image. And you didn't fit that image. So I made a choice. I chose Jessica's family over you. I chose status and comfort over loyalty and honor. I chose to be the kind of person who would give his mother a scarf and tell her to hide her wrinkles, as if the evidence of her 60 years spent largely sacrificing for me, was something embarrassing. I have no excuse for this. There is no excuse for this. Claire called me last week and asked me a question. She said, when Emma is your age, and she's been working herself to death to give her children opportunities, would you want her children to treat her the way you've treated Mom? I hung up on her. But the question stayed with me. And the answer is no. God, no. If Emma's children ever treated her the way I've treated you, I'd be horrified. I'd see them as ungrateful and cruel and fundamentally lacking in character. Which means that's what I am. Ungrateful. Cruel. Lacking in character. I can't undo what I've done. I can't give you back the years with Emma that you should have had. I can't take back the hurt I've caused. But I can tell you that I see it now. I see what I've done and I'm drowning in the shame of it. Jessica told me she came to see you. She told me what she said about how she influenced me, how she convinced me to push you away. And she's right, she did influence me. But she's also wrong because ultimately every choice was mine. Every decision to exclude you, every time I prioritized Jessica's feelings over yours, every moment I treated you like an inconvenience. Those were all my choices. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to change your will or let me back into your life. I just need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than I have words to express. And I need you to know that Emma is asking about you. She wants to know her grandma Eleanor. And I'm going to make sure she does, regardless of whether you forgive me or not. Because she deserves to know the woman who raised me. The woman who sacrificed everything so I could have opportunities. The woman who is stronger and more honorable than I'll ever be. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you. I just forgot how to show it. I forgot that love means sacrifice and commitment and showing up, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. I'm sorry I forgot. I'm sorry it took losing you to remember. Max. I read that email 5 times. Each time I felt something different. Anger. Sadness. Hope. Fear. By the 5th reading I was crying, but I wasn't sure if they were tears of pain or relief or something in between. Claire called that evening. Did you see Max's email? Yes. What are you going to do? I don't know. What do you think I should do? I think, she said carefully. That's not helpful, sweetheart. Mom, I love my brother. But he hurt you in ways that I don't know if I could forgive them. And I wouldn't blame you if you couldn't either. But I also know you. I know how much you love him despite everything. And I know that part of you wants to rebuild this if it can be rebuilt. What if I try and he just does it again? What if I let him back in 6 months from now? He's right back to being ashamed of me. Then you'll walk away again. But this time you'll know you tried. You'll know you gave him a real chance to change, and if he doesn't take it, that's on him. I'm scared, Claire. I know. But Mom? You're also brave. You've been brave your whole life. You'll figure this out. That night I did something I hadn't done in months. I pulled out old photo albums from when Max and Claire were little. I looked at pictures of Max at 5, grinning with his 2 front teeth missing. Max at 10 holding up a trophy from a science fair. Max at 16 dressed up for his first formal dance, looking so much like his father it made my heart ache. I looked at those pictures and tried to find the moment when I'd lost him. When had he stopped being that little boy who told me he didn't need basketball shoes? When had he become the man who told me to hide my wrinkles? But the more I looked, the more I realized that maybe I hadn't lost him. Maybe he'd lost himself. And maybe, just maybe, the pain of the past few months had helped him find his way back. I didn't respond to Max's email that night. Or the next day. Or the day after that. I sat with it. I thought about it. I talked to Margaret from my book club, who'd been through her own family estrangement and had wisdom to share. I talked to my volunteer coordinator at the food bank, who reminded me that people can change if they really want to. And slowly, over the course of 2 weeks, I started to feel something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet. But something softer. A willingness to consider the possibility of forgiveness. A crack in the wall I built around my heart. On a Saturday afternoon 3 weeks after Max's email, I did something impulsive. I got in my car and drove to his house. I didn't call ahead. I didn't warn him. I just drove over, pulled into his driveway and rang the doorbell. Max answered. He looked shocked to see me, his eyes going wide. Mom, can I come in? Of course. God, yes, of course. He stepped aside, practically tripping over himself in his hurry to let me in. Jessica appeared from the kitchen, Emma on her hip. When she saw me, her face transformed. Eleanor, thank you for coming. Thank you so much. I haven't decided anything yet, I said quickly. I'm just here. To talk. Of course. Whatever you need. Jessica set Emma down. Emma, sweetie, come say hi to Grandma Eleanor. Emma looked at me with curious eyes. She was bigger than I remembered, her baby roundness giving way to little girl features. Hi, she said shyly. Hi, Emma. I knelt down to her level, my heart breaking and healing simultaneously. I'm your grandma. Your daddy's mommy. Like Grandma Patricia? Yes, just like Grandma Patricia. She studied me seriously. You have pretty eyes. I laughed, a real laugh that felt rusty from disuse. Thank you, sweetheart. So do you. For the next hour we sat in their living room, Max, Jessica, Emma, and me, and we talked. Really talked, maybe for the first time ever. Max told me about how he'd been feeling, about the realization he'd come to, about how he wanted to change. Jessica apologized again, more thoroughly this time, acknowledging specific things she'd done and said. I didn't let them off the hook. I asked hard questions. I pushed back when they tried to minimize or explain away their actions. I made it clear that trust, once broken so thoroughly, would take years to rebuild. But I also watched Emma play with her toys, bringing them over to show me, asking me questions in that direct way children have. I watched Max watch me with his daughter, and I saw something in his face that gave me hope. Regret, yes, but also determination. When it was time for me to leave, Max walked me to the door. Mom, I know you haven't decided anything yet, but thank you for coming. Thank you for giving me a chance to start making this right. Max. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, this person who'd hurt me so badly. I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for Emma. She deserves to know her grandmother. And I'm doing it for me, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what if. I understand. But if you ever make me feel like I'm an embarrassment again, if you ever exclude me or minimize me or treat me like I'm not good enough, I'm gone. Not just from your life but from Emma's. Because I won't let her grow up watching her father disrespect her grandmother. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. And I swear to you, Mom, I will never make you feel that way again. Words are easy, Max, show me. Through your actions over time, show me. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I will. I promise I will. The months that followed were complicated. There was no magical moment where everything was fixed. No dramatic scene where we all cried and hugged and went back to normal. Because there was no normal to go back to, we had to build something new. Max and Jessica started inviting me over regularly. Not just for obligatory dinners but for casual things. Sunday breakfasts. Movie nights. Afternoons in the park with Emma. At first it felt forced, awkward. We were all trying too hard, dancing around each other, afraid of saying the wrong thing. But slowly, over weeks and then months, it started to feel more natural. Emma began to recognize me, to get excited when I arrived, to ask when Grandma Eleanor was coming over. I watched her grow and change, learning to ride a bike, starting preschool, developing her personality. And I watched Max change too. It wasn't overnight. There were moments when I could see him struggling, when old habits tried to reassert themselves. Once, when Jessica's parents were visiting, I saw him tense up when I arrived, saw him calculating how to manage the situation. But then Emma ran to me, hugging my legs and demanding I see her new drawing. And Max relaxed. He introduced me to Jessica's parents properly, talking about his childhood, about how hard I'd worked to give him opportunities. It wasn't gushing or performative, it was honest. Matter of fact. This is my mother. This is where I came from. I'm not ashamed. Jessica's mother was polite but distant. I didn't expect us to be friends and I was okay with that. But Jessica's father surprised me by asking questions about my life, my work at the food bank, my painting classes. At the end of that visit, he shook my hand and said, "Max is lucky to have you." Max heard him, and the look on his face was worth every bit of pain I'd endured to get there. Claire got married in June and it was perfect. I helped her get ready, pinned her veil, held her hand while she cried happy tears. And when she walked down the aisle, Max was there, standing as one of David's groomsmen, and when his eyes met mine across the church, he smiled. A real smile. My son was there, really there, not just physically present but emotionally engaged. At the reception, Max gave a speech. He talked about Claire, about their childhood, about growing up with a single mother who'd worked multiple jobs to give them everything. He talked about sacrifice and love and family. And then he looked directly at me and said, "Mom, I know I haven't always shown it, but everything I am is because of you. Thank you for never giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." The room erupted in applause, but all I could see was my son, finally acknowledging publicly what I'd done for him, finally willing to be associated with my life, my struggles, my sacrifices. I cried. Claire cried. Half the room cried. And later, when we were all dancing and laughing, Emma pulled me onto the dance floor and we spun around together, her little hands in mine, and I thought, this is what I fought for. This is what I refused to give up on. But I didn't change my will. Not immediately. Because words and moments, no matter how meaningful, aren't enough. I needed to see sustained change. I needed to see that Max's transformation was real and lasting, not just a performance to get back in my good graces. Over the next year, he proved himself. He called me regularly, not because he needed something but just to talk. He asked about my life, my friends, my hobbies. He brought Emma over to visit without Jessica sometimes, just the three of us, because he wanted his daughter to have one-on-one time with me. He invited me to his work events, introducing me to his colleagues without shame or hesitation. When Emma turned 4, they threw her a big birthday party. Both grandmothers were there, Jessica's mother and me. And this time there was no competition, no hierarchy. We were both Emma's grandmothers, both important in our own ways. Jessica's mother and I weren't friends, but we were civil, united in our love for Emma. Jessica herself was trying. She asked me to teach her how to make my pot roast, the one Max had loved as a kid. She asked about my volunteer work and ended up joining me at the food bank once a month. She was never going to be the daughter-in-law I dreamed of, but she was becoming someone I could respect. Someone who was genuinely trying to atone for her past behavior. On my 61st birthday, they threw me a party. Not at a restaurant but at their house. They invited my book club friends, my volunteer friends, Claire and David. They made a homemade cake. Emma had helped frost it, and it was messy and perfect. They gave me thoughtful gifts. Books they knew I'd love, art supplies, a beautiful journal. And Max stood up and made a toast. "To my mother," he said, raising his glass. "The strongest person I know. Thank you for teaching me that love means showing up, even when it's hard. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it. And thank you for being the kind of grandmother Emma deserves. Someone who's present, who's engaged, who loves unconditionally." Everyone drank to that. And when Max hugged me, he whispered in my ear, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning it anyway. You're doing okay so far," I whispered back. 2 months later, I met with Patricia, my lawyer. "I want to update my will again," I told her. She pulled out my file. "What changes do you want to make?" "I want Max and Emma to be included. Not equally with Claire. Actions have consequences and I want that lesson to stand. But included. With conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "Max gets a portion of my estate only if he maintains a relationship with me until my death. No gaps longer than a month without contact, unless there's a documented emergency. If he reverts to his old behavior, his portion goes to Emma's trust fund instead." Patricia made notes. "And Emma's trust fund increases. But she still has to meet the condition about maintaining regular contact with me. I want to ensure she knows me, really knows me, not just as a name on a document. This is good, Eleanor. Firm but fair. That's what I'm aiming for." The updated will was finalized a month later. I sent copies to both Max and Claire, along with letters explaining my reasoning. Max called me immediately. "Mom, you didn't have to. I know I didn't have to, but I wanted to. You've shown me over the past year that you're willing to change, that you understand what you did wrong. This is me acknowledging that effort. Thank you. Thank you so much. Max, don't thank me yet. This is conditional. If you slip back into old patterns, if you start treating me like an inconvenience again, you lose everything. I'm not playing games anymore. I understand. And I won't. I won't let you down again. Good. Because this isn't just about you and me. This is about Emma. She's watching how you treat me. She's learning from you what it means to honor your parents, to value family. If you screw this up, you're not just hurting me. You're teaching your daughter that it's okay to discard people when they're no longer convenient. I know. I think about that every day. I think about what kind of example I'm setting for her. Then keep thinking about it. Keep being the father and the son you want her to remember. 3 years have passed since that birthday dinner with the scarf. Emma is 6 now, in first grade, and she comes to my house every Wednesday after school. We bake cookies and work on art projects and read books together. She knows my house as well as she knows her own. She has a drawer here with clothes for sleepovers, a shelf with her favorite toys, a spot at the table that's just hers. Last week she made me a drawing at school. It was an assignment to draw your family. She drew herself in the middle, Max and Jessica on one side, and both grandmothers on the other. These are my grandmas, she'd written underneath. Grandma Patricia and Grandma Eleanor. I love them both. When Max brought her over and I saw that drawing, I cried. Emma looked worried. Don't you like it, Grandma? I love it, sweetheart. I love it so much. These are happy tears. Max caught my eye over Emma's head, and I saw that his eyes were wet too. He mouthed thank you, and I nodded. Later, after Emma was playing in the yard, Max sat down with me on the porch. I don't think I'll ever stop being grateful that you gave me another chance. You earned it. You've continued to earn it every day for 3 years. I know how close I came to losing you forever. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it, about what would have happened if you hadn't come to my house that day. If you'd just written me off completely. I almost did. There were moments when I thought it would be easier to just walk away. Why didn't you? I thought about it. Because giving up would have meant they won Jessica's family, their prejudices, their narrow view of who deserves respect and dignity. And I wasn't willing to let them win. But also because I saw something in you that day Emma asked about me. Jessica told me how you broke down. And I realized that underneath all the layers of defensiveness and image management, my son was still in there somewhere. I'm still sorry, Mom. I'll always be sorry for what I put you through. I know you are. And I've forgiven you, Max. Not immediately, not easily, but I have. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting or pretending it didn't happen. It's about choosing to move forward, choosing to believe that people can change and grow. He was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Jessica and I have been in therapy, individual and couples, working through a lot of things. That's good. My therapist asked me once why I was so willing to abandon you to please Jessica. And I realized it wasn't really about pleasing Jessica. It was about trying to prove I was worthy of her world. I was so insecure about my background that I tried to erase it. Tried to erase you. And now I understand that where I came from is my greatest strength. The fact that you raised us alone, that you worked yourself to exhaustion to give us opportunities, that you never gave up, that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of. And anyone who can't see that isn't someone I want in my life. Emma came running up then, holding a flower she'd picked. For you, Grandma. I took it, thanking her and tucking it behind my ear. She giggled and ran off again, and Max and I sat there in comfortable silence, watching her play. Claire and David visit often too. They're trying to have a baby, and Claire jokes that I'm going to be an even better grandmother to her kids because I've had so much practice with Emma. I tell her every child is different, every relationship unique. But secretly, I'm excited at the prospect of more grandchildren, more chances to love and be loved. My life is full now in a way it hasn't been since Robert died. I have my book club and my painting classes. I volunteer at the food bank twice a week. I have dinner with Margaret every Friday. I take Emma to the park on Saturdays. Claire and David come over for Sunday brunch. Max and Jessica invite me to Emma's school events, her soccer games, her piano recitals. I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not an inconvenience or an embarrassment. I'm Eleanor, mother, grandmother, friend, volunteer, artist. I'm a person with value that has nothing to do with my usefulness to others and everything to do with who I am. Sometimes I think about that birthday dinner, about the scarf and Max's words and the cheap grocery store cake. I think about how much pain I was in, how lost I felt, how close I came to giving up entirely. And I'm grateful. Grateful that it happened, as awful as it was, because it forced me to finally stand up for myself. It forced me to set boundaries and demand respect. It taught me that sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, letting go creates the space for something better to grow in its place. Last month, Max took me to lunch. Just the two of us, no Jessica, no Emma. We went to a nice restaurant, the kind of place I never would have gone to before because I would have felt out of place. But I didn't feel out of place anymore. I belonged there as much as anyone else. Over lunch, Max told me about a promotion he'd gotten at work. They want me to give a speech at the company-wide meeting, he said, about leadership and inspiration. And I want to talk about you. Me. About what real leadership looks like. About sacrifice and determination and doing what needs to be done, even when it's hard. About how everything I know about those things, I learned from watching you. Max. I'm going to tell them about how you worked 3 jobs. About how you never complained or gave up. About how you put us through college even though it meant you'd be in debt for decades. I'm going to tell them that if they want to understand what it means to be a real leader, they should look at what you did for 28 years. I reached across the table and took his hand. I'm proud of you. Not because of your job or your house or your success, but because of the man you're becoming. The father you are to Emma. The son you've worked so hard to be again. I'm proud of you too, Mom. I should have said that years ago. I should have been saying it all along. We finished lunch, and as we were leaving, Max stopped me on the sidewalk. Hey, you remember that scarf? The one I gave you. I stiffened slightly. I remember. Do you still have it? I do. It's in the back of my closet. Would you consider wearing it? Not to hide anything, but because it's beautiful. Because silk scarves look nice. Because you deserve nice things. I looked at my son, understanding what he was really asking. He was asking if I could reclaim that gift, transform it from a symbol of his shame into something else. Something that belonged to me. Maybe, I said. Someday. He nodded. Whenever you're ready. Or never. Whatever you want. That's the thing about forgiveness, about healing, about rebuilding broken relationships. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in moments, in small choices, in the gradual accumulation of better behavior. It happens when someone proves day after day, month after month, year after year, that they've really changed. Max has proved it. Not perfectly, there are still moments when I see glimpses of the old Max, the one who cares too much about appearances. But he catches himself now. He corrects. He apologizes. He tries. And that's all I ever wanted. Not perfection. Just effort. Just acknowledgement. Just love that shows up, that does the work, that honors what we've built together. Yesterday was Emma's 6th birthday party. The house was full of children and parents, streamers and balloons, chaos and joy. Both grandmothers were there, helping, participating, celebrating. At one point, I was in the kitchen with Jessica, cutting cake, when she said quietly, "Eleanor, I need to tell you something." I looked up, knife in hand. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I never properly thanked you." "For what?" "For not giving up on us. For coming back after everything we did. For giving Max a chance to be better. For being in Emma's life." She paused, struggling with emotion. "And for showing me what real strength looks like. What real dignity looks like. I thought I knew, but I didn't. Not until I saw how you handled all of this." I set down the knife and looked at this woman who'd caused me so much pain. "Jessica, we all make mistakes. The question is what we do after. Whether we learn and grow, or whether we keep making the same mistakes and expecting different results. I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to grow. I know you are. And I appreciate that." She reached out and squeezed my hand. "Thank you. For everything." When the party wound down and most guests had left, the family gathered in the living room. Emma was exhausted but happy, surrounded by toys and wrapping paper. Max sat on one side of her, Jessica on the other. Claire and David were on the couch across from me. Emma looked around at all of us and said, "This was the best birthday ever." "Why's that, sweetie?" Jessica asked. "Because everyone I love was here. My whole family." She looked at me. "Right, Grandma Eleanor? We're all family." "That's right, sweetheart. We're all family." And in that moment I realized something. I'd won. Not by being vindictive or cruel. Not by holding grudges or refusing to forgive. But by refusing to accept less than I deserved. By standing up for myself. By setting boundaries and sticking to them. By being willing to walk away, which paradoxically created the possibility of coming back. I taught my son, and his wife and even Jessica's family, that I wasn't someone to be dismissed or diminished. That my love wasn't unlimited and unconditional, if it meant accepting abuse and disrespect. That relationships are built on mutual respect, not on obligation or guilt. And I taught Emma by example what it means to have self-respect. What it means to demand to be treated with dignity. What it means to love yourself enough to walk away from people who don't value you. These are lessons she'll carry with her for the rest of her life. Lessons that will shape how she lets others treat her. How she treats herself. How she navigates the world. That's my legacy. Not money or possessions, but wisdom earned through pain and survival. Strength demonstrated through the hardest moments. Love that's tough enough to set boundaries and brave enough to enforce them. As I drove home that night, I thought about where I'd been 3 years ago. Broken, invisible, begging for crumbs of affection from a son who'd made it clear I wasn't good enough for his new life. And I thought about where I am now. Whole, visible, surrounded by people who genuinely want me in their lives. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It happened through 1,000 small choices. Through deciding again and again that I deserved better. Through standing firm when it would have been easier to cave. Through being willing to lose everything in order to gain my self-respect. Was it worth it? The pain, the fear, the risk? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because the alternative was spending the rest of my life making myself smaller to fit into spaces that were never meant for me. Hiding my wrinkles, hiding myself, to avoid making others uncomfortable. And I'm done hiding. I'm done apologizing for existing. I'm done accepting less than I deserve. I'm 63 now. I don't know how many years I have left. But I know how I want to spend them. Surrounded by people who value me. Doing things that bring me joy. Living authentically as exactly who I am. Wrinkles and all. So let me ask you. What would you do in my place? If someone you loved, someone you'd sacrificed everything for, suddenly decided you weren't good enough, what would you do? Would you fight for the relationship? Or would you walk away? Would you forgive or would you hold on to the hurt? I chose to fight, but not in the way you might think. I didn't fight to keep things the same. I fought to demand better. I fought for my dignity, my self-respect, my right to be treated like a human being worthy of love and consideration. And you know what I learned? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for the other person, is to refuse to participate in your own diminishment. To say no. To walk away. To let them feel the consequences of their choices. Because that's what finally woke Max up. Not my begging or my tears or my attempts to be good enough for his new life. What woke him up was losing me. Really losing me. Facing the possibility that I might be gone forever. And having to explain to his daughter why he'd pushed away his own mother. I also learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending the hurt never happened. It means acknowledging what happened, seeing genuine change and remorse, and choosing to move forward anyway. But it's a choice that has to be earned, not demanded. Max earned it. Took him years, but he earned it. And now we have something better than what we had before. Not the blind, unconditional love of my earlier motherhood, but something more mature. A relationship built on mutual respect, on boundaries, on the understanding that love requires effort and attention and showing up. I want you to understand something important. This story isn't about revenge. It's not about punishing Max or making him suffer. It's about recognizing your own worth and refusing to accept less than you deserve. It's about understanding that you teach people how to treat you. And if you accept disrespect, you're teaching them that disrespect is acceptable. The will, the boundaries, the time apart, those weren't acts of cruelty. They were acts of self-love. They were me finally saying, after 60 years of putting everyone else first, that I matter too. That my feelings count. That I deserve to be treated with kindness and consideration. And here's the beautiful thing. Standing up for myself didn't just save me. It saved Max too. It saved him from becoming the kind of man who abandons his mother for status and appearances. It saved him from teaching his daughter terrible lessons about how to treat the people who love you. It saved him from a lifetime of regret and shame. Sometimes love means letting people fall so they can learn to stand on their own. Sometimes it means allowing them to face consequences so they understand the weight of their choices. That's not cruelty. That's wisdom. I want to end this story by telling you about something that happened last week. I was at Emma's school for her science fair presentation. She built a volcano, every kid builds a volcano, and she was so excited to show me how it worked. As we stood there waiting for her turn to present, another mother approached me. You're Emma's grandmother, right? Eleanor. I am. Max has told me so much about you. About how you raised him and his sister alone. About all the sacrifices you made. She smiled warmly. He talks about you all the time. About what an incredible woman you are. I was stunned. Max talked about me? To other parents? With pride. He does. I managed to say, oh yes. He's always saying things like, my mom would handle this differently. Or my mom taught me to. It's clear how much he admires you. After she walked away, I stood there trying not to cry. Because that's what I'd wanted all along. Not to be hidden or minimized or treated like an embarrassment. Just to be acknowledged. To be valued. To be loved openly, not in secret or with shame. When Emma finished her presentation, the volcano worked perfectly. Max came over. Did you see? Wasn't she great? She was amazing. Just like her father was at her age. He smiled, then said quietly, Mrs. Henderson came up to me earlier. She said she met you. She said you were lovely. She told me you talk about me. To the other parents. I do. All the time. He looked at me seriously. Mom, I know I wasted years being ashamed of the most important person in my life. I'm not making that mistake anymore. Everyone in Emma's life is going to know about you. About what you did for me. About who you are. I reached up and touched his cheek, the way I used to when he was little. That's all I ever wanted, Max. Just to be included. Just to matter. You matter more than you'll ever know. We stood there watching Emma accept her participation ribbon. Everyone gets one, but she was thrilled anyway. And I thought about the journey that brought us here. The pain, the anger, the separation, the slow rebuilding. All of it necessary. All of it leading to this moment of peace and connection. I thought about the scarf still in my closet. Maybe I would wear it someday. Maybe I'd wear it to Emma's graduation, or Claire's baby shower when she finally gets pregnant, or just to Sunday brunch because it's beautiful and I deserve beautiful things. Or maybe I'd give it back to Max with a note. I don't need to hide anymore. But thank you for the reminder that I'm strong enough to demand better. Either way, it's my choice now. Everything is my choice now. And that's the real victory. Not that Max changed, though I'm grateful he did. The real victory is that I found myself again. That I remembered I'm a person with value that exists independent of anyone else's recognition or approval. I'm Eleanor. I'm 63 years old. I have wrinkles and gray hair and hands that are rough from work and age. I also have a book club and painting class and volunteer work that matters. I have a daughter who loves me fiercely and calls me 3 times a week. I have a son who finally understands what I gave him, and is working every day to be worthy of that gift. I have a granddaughter who lights up when she sees me and tells her friends about her grandma Eleanor with pride. I have myself. And that, more than anything else, is what I fought for and won. So if you're out there reading this, experiencing your own version of this story, being diminished by someone you love, being told you're not good enough, being pushed aside for someone or something else, I want you to hear me. You deserve better. You deserve to be loved openly, proudly, genuinely. You deserve to take up space without apologizing for it. You deserve relationships where you're valued, not just tolerated. And if the people in your life can't give you that, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to say, I deserve better than this, and if you can't see my worth, that's your problem, not mine. It's scary. It hurts. There will be moments when you wonder if you made the right choice. But I promise you, on the other side of that fear and pain is something better. Maybe the relationship heals like mine with Max did. Or maybe it doesn't and you build a new life without that person. Either way, you'll have your dignity. You'll have your self-respect. You'll have yourself. And that's everything. Thank you for staying with me through this story. Thank you for listening to an old woman talk about wrinkles and scarves and birthday cakes, and the long hard road to reclaiming yourself. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced something similar? How did you handle it? What would you do in my situation? And if you found value in this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing to this channel. There are so many stories like mine out there. Stories of struggle and survival, of pain and redemption, of losing yourself and fighting to get back. Stories that need to be told, need to be heard, need to remind us all that we're not alone in our struggles. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's being diminished, who's accepting less than they deserve, who needs permission to stand up for themselves. Because that's what stories do. They give us permission. They show us possibilities. They remind us that we're stronger than we think, that change is possible, that it's never too late to choose yourself. I chose myself at 60 years old. You can choose yourself at any age, at any time, in any circumstance. You are worthy. You are valuable. You are enough. Don't let anyone, not your children, not your spouse, not your friends, not anyone, make you believe otherwise. Stand tall. Take up space. Wear your wrinkles like the badges of honor they are. And remember, the people who truly love you will never ask you to make yourself smaller. They'll celebrate everything you are, wrinkles and all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being brave enough to keep fighting for yourself, whatever that looks like in your life. Until next time, take care of yourselves. You're worth it.